If you have a short sentence and you want people to really pay attention, you suddenly feel more impact. Part of the meaning is in the words, and part is in how we say those words. When you have something to say, you want to deliver that message with clarity and impact. And that's true if you are giving a presentation to a group, if you're talking to a client or your boss, or if you're just expressing your thoughts and feelings to a friend. Now, if English is not your native language, you want to be aware of certain elements of the spoken language that make a big difference in how well you communicate in English and in how impactful your speech is. So, communicating in English is not just about grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation. Here's what I want you to understand. Compared to a lot of other languages, English relies pretty heavily on intonation to communicate part of its meaning. So part of the meaning is in the words, and part is in how we say those words. And this is true in all languages, but it's even more true in English. This is like the hidden aspect of the language that they almost never teach you about. But with a little help, you can start to tune in, to hear, observe, and even start to use that extra layer of meaning that's communicated through English intonation. So if you're new here, my name is Dawn, and I've been working to lay out some fundamental principles that are always operating in English intonation to help English learners and English lovers build awareness of them. And as you develop this awareness, you will catch more of the meaning that native speakers are communicating, and you'll be able to use these principles to deliver your own message with more impact. So today, I'm going to give you a chance to test your own sense of English intonation. We'll discuss key concepts in intonation as we encounter them, and we'll see how all these principles in intonation work together. So to do this, we are going to look at some quotes that some of you have sent in for us to analyze and practice. So let's just jump in with the first quote, and we'll talk about how to deliver this quote for maximum impact. Now, the first quote is one that I actually asked you to think about in my lesson on the pause. In that lesson, we talked about breaking up speech into chunks by using well-placed pauses, and how this is actually the easiest and most intuitive thing you can do to increase the impactfulness of your speech. So I'll show you the quote first. If you want to be really active, you will want to pause this video and take a moment to think about this quote. Think about how you would say it, and specifically where you would place pauses. There's not just one right way to break this into chunks, but like I said before, I'm a generous chunker because using small chunks of language with more frequent pauses really helps the listener understand the structure of what you're saying, and it also gives them time to process and absorb what you've said. So I would probably chunk this quite generously, and I would say, teaching is mostly listening, and learning is mostly telling. So did you notice where the pauses happened there? Teaching, pause. Now that gives my listener a chance to process, okay, teaching, thinking about teaching. I'm ready to hear more about teaching. I am pulling up all of my associations with teaching and ready to hear more about it. Teaching, pause, is mostly listening. Now this is the opposite of how people usually think about teaching. So especially in something that's unusual or unexpected, I'm going to use frequent pauses and maybe a little bit longer pauses to really let them absorb that this is not what I expected to hear. I need to change some of my concepts to even process this. Teaching, pause, is mostly listening, and learning, pause, is mostly telling. Now you notice that we had pauses after the subject both times. Teaching is the subject, pause, get ready for what happens with the subject. And then of course you have a comma in the middle. That's an obvious place for a pause. And learning, yes, what about learning? Is mostly telling. And the other thing that happens here is that when we say teaching is mostly listening, we have two thought groups here. Teaching is one thought group, is mostly listening. Now, a thing that's generally true in English is that when you have a chunk of speech, the last content word will be the one that gets the most stress. That's what we call your focus word, and that's where your pitch changes. So if you have more chunks, you will have more focus words. In other words, smaller chunks let you emphasize more things. Teaching is a one-word thought group, and your pitch is going to change there. Teaching, your next thought group, is mostly listening, and listening is the last content word. That's where your pitch is going to change. Teaching is mostly listening, and learning is mostly telling. So you have 4 thought groups, and each of those units has one major pitch change on the focus word. Let's practice it one more time. Teaching is mostly listening, and learning is mostly telling. Yes, let's go to the next quote. Here's how I would say this. Don't worry when you're not recognized, but strive to be worthy of recognition. So let's analyze what I'm doing there. The first thing we're going to do is identify the pauses, and then we will have our thought groups marked by the pauses. And after that, we'll see what other principles are operating here. So don't worry when you're not recognized. I think that that's good as a single chunk. Could you chunk it more? Don't worry, pause, when you're not recognized. You could, but I don't think that I will. I like this as a single chunk. Don't worry when you're not recognized. It's not the end of the sentence, so I'm going to say, don't worry when you're not recognized, and the person knows to listen for more, but strive to be worthy of recognition. So I'm pausing after worthy, but strive to be worthy, pause, and the focus word is worthy, but strive to be worthy, but strive to be worthy. Do you feel that pitch change? But strive to be worthy, pause, of recognition. Now, this gives us a chance to observe an extremely important concept in English intonation, which is contrast. As I've mentioned before, native English speakers have a deep need to stress contrast more than in other languages I'm familiar with. We mark contrast with intonation, and it has a special sound. The contrasting word here is, don't worry when you're not recognized, but strive to be worthy of recognition. Worthy is where the contrast is. Worthy of recognition. Now, of recognition is something that's repeated. From the first half of the sentence, we introduced the idea of being recognized, and now it's repeated. So don't worry if you're not recognized, but strive to be worthy of recognition. Contrast old information. So we de-accent old information in English. And I have 2 videos where I talk about de-accenting. So if you want to dive deeper, you can check those out. Basically, the idea is that if something has already been mentioned, or if it's part of the shared knowledge between speaker and listener, we don't put it up high, like on a pedestal where it gets the spotlight. we put it down low in a place and a tone we use for de-accenting something that's already been established. And that's happening here. Don't worry when you're not recognized, but strive to be worthy of recognition. Contrast de-accenting. Yes. Now look at this one. This is a great concept, but I feel like as a quote, it needs a little help to make it sound more exciting. So what can we do to make this sound as exciting and exhilarating as the concept really is? Well, first, we're going to think about pauses. Where will we place the pauses? How will we chunk this short sentence? Let's use two options. If I say, learning never exhausts the mind, I feel like that almost went by so fast that you couldn't really catch it or process it. But if I say, learning never exhausts the mind, then you suddenly feel more impact. Learning never exhausts the mind. So what did I do here? Learning, that's my subject, and I put a substantial pause after the subject. It alerts people that the subject is now complete and you can be ready for what that subject is going to do. Learning, substantial pause, never exhausts the mind. Did you see how I chunked that? Never exhausts the mind. If you have a short sentence and you want people to really pay attention to this big concept, you can chunk it word by word. You treat each of those words as a thought unit unto itself, and you give each one that pitch shift, and suddenly the whole thing is much more impactful. This is sometimes represented in writing by taking what should be one sentence and making each word its own sentence with a capital and a period. Yes, this cannot stand. This will not stand. Sentence, 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 sentence. So that's a written representation of how we would deliver something verbally for maximum impact by treating each word as its own thought unit. Yes, let's practice that again, because this is a really powerful technique. You don't want to use it all the time, but when you need it, nothing is more powerful. So let's practice. Learning, and you hear me rising because that's getting you ready and anticipating. Learning, yes, what's next? Never exhausts the mind. Now, the mind is one unit. It's not the mind, right? But basically, almost every word is its own thought unit. Learning never exhausts the mind. Suddenly, it feels so impactful, right? You are able to feel the weight of this major concept. And if you can feel it, let me know, right? I can feel it in the comments below. So I am going to leave you feeling the power of our voice and those sometimes very simple things we can do to deliver our message with so much impact. I have more quotes, but I'm going to save them for later because I think this is the perfect amount of information for you to absorb at one time. And do you have any favorite quotes? Share them below, and maybe I'll get to analyze your quote one day so that we can all benefit from noticing and practicing the things we can do with our voice to deliver a powerful, impactful message. Okay, be well, have a beautiful day, and I will see you soon to continue this conversation. Bye-bye.